Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, Mindset, Exercise, and Nutrition. We are three personal trainers and health coaches dedicated to providing information in these realms to promote critical thinking and assist you in your life practice. My name is Matt Gluckman, and as always, with me are my co-hosts. Unfortunately, we don't have Eric with us, but we have Mike. But we like to explore topics related to mindset, exercise, and nutrition. We look into the psychology, the science, and the behavior, and how it can shape your fitness lifestyle. So take a listen as we peel back the onion, fall down the rabbit hole. We hope we can help guide people along their journey as they continue to strengthen their body, mind, and spirit. And we have a very special episode today, and I'm extremely excited to say that we have Maggie Downie with us for an interview talking about some pain theory and her book, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. So welcome, Maggie.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to get to talk with you because I've been listening to your podcast a bit, and it's just fun to listen to a bunch of fitness people really nerd out about fitness.
You can
like
say
being called
nerds.
nerds. It's
We're
all
okay
good.
calling us nerds.
I know, but like it's fun to find a group like that, right?
I agree. Yeah, we're super excited to have you on, and just reading your website and what you're about, it just fits in with what we promote, and we love that you're out there promoting, beating the drum, trying to wake people up and educate people in the proper ways to overcome chronic pain. So yeah, go ahead and tell our audience just a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I left my full-time job and I started a Pilates company. So I'm certified in Pilates and have training in special populations and injuries and rehabilitation. So I'm not a physical therapist, but I can do post rehab. Um, and over time, I started to get a lot of clients who were done with physical therapy or their insurance ran out or they just had an injury or like anyone else, my clients who don't have chronic pain, like did something to themselves at some point in life and had pain. So literally every human winds up in pain. And I found that I don't like to be gimmicky, right? Like chronic pain can be hard to unwind, but that there are some simple techniques and certainly a lot of new research on pain theory that can be really helpful if people just know it, but they don't know it. So it started actually, I partnered with
Right.
another Pilates business owner in Connecticut, and we started this company called Peeps in Motion, where we put workshops for specific types of pain online. So you could get like a happy back workshop, a happy foot workshop. And the book evolved out of that, like as another resource. Like, do you work well by reading information? Do you work well by coming to one of our classes? Do you work well on your
Hmm.
own with online programming? How can we get information to as many people
Right.
to help them feel better in their own body, basically?
Right, because that tends to be like the biggest struggle, right? Is like we as professionals, we have the information. We're just like trying to not only get it to the person, but then trying to get them to understand it and change their paradigm. So yeah, I love that's what you're about, just spreading that information. So then, when did the research into the physical therapy groups come to play? I remember when we were talking before, and you were talking about how they kind of missed the boat on educating their clients on pain.
Yeah, so actually, I started researching. The book came out about 2 weeks ago, and I started researching like 3 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, I started researching before that because I'm always like, if I have a client and I can't seem to solve something for them, I would research. But like, really working on the book started about 3 years ago. But it was very late in that research. I found a review that showed they put out to, I want to say it was 167 physical therapy schools in the United States to self-report how they were educating the future physical therapists. And uh, a fairly high percentage felt like they weren't adequately educating on pain theory, and only 6% self-reported that they had a dedicated course on pain. And I was like, this isn't possible, right? Like physical therapists know about pain, like that's what they do.
You'd think that'd be like one of the first things, right?
Right. And it should be, right? Like a teacher, the first thing a teacher has to go through is education theory. The first thing an electrician has to go through is electrical theory. And so I truly think it's an oversight of thinking, well, because everything we do is like, you have knee pain, this is how we get you out of knee pain. You have shoulder pain, this is how we get you out of shoulder pain. They didn't realize that they really need every physical therapist to go through a comprehensive class on generally what is pain, What is the current research on how you get people out of pain? And that doesn't mean that physical therapists are bad or that they haven't learned that information on their own or that they don't have it. But it is an oversight that I think we really need to change, both to help physical therapists and to help their patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think kind of informing the people is one of the most important first steps to start with. And when it comes to physical therapy and you're trying to get somebody to move better and just establish healthy movement patterns, you would think that educating them on what sensation in their body should feel like pain, what should feel like soreness, tightness, that would kind of be a really foundational piece. So it's really interesting when you first told me that kind of blew my mind about the less than 6% had a dedicated program to educating their clients on pain. But
Well, there's a similar parallel with the medical field as well. When you look at how many doctors, medical doctors, have little to no training in nutrition, and many,
yeah,
I think they're coming around now as we get smarter and there's more sharing of information with the internet. But um, uh, a lot of doctors don't even ask any questions about nutrition whatsoever, and they have little to no experience or education around it as well. A lot of have taken maybe one class throughout their entire schooling. So a similar parallel there, and you kind of miss the boat, and those professionals like the physical therapists aren't as equipped to deal with pain, just as doctors aren't equipped to deal with the nutritional interventions that may be necessary.
Yeah, and I think I worry that part of that is a way we've swung in how we give care, and like you get your 15 minutes every.
just kind of rub some tape over it,
Yes,
right? And just some duct tape, and there you're off on your go, right? Off you
Right.
go.
because I do think a part of healing is communication and building relationships, right? Like it sounds a little new agey, but there's actual science behind it. Like if you talk to
Yep.
people and you ask them, where do you think your pain originated? Why do you have pain? There is research that indicates that helps them get out of pain.
I was actually just listening to a podcast with Dr. Gundry. I don't know if you know Dr. Stephen Gundry and the Plant Paradox, but empathy. And they had two groups. They both had colds, and one group and they both had the same treatments. One group, the doctors were very empathetic, and the other group, the doctors were very stoic. And the doctors that were very stoic, their patients, if there was figures, but they tended to stay sicker longer and didn't recover as quick as the group that was empathetic. And it was very fascinating how just that connective, that human interaction piece, that part where someone feels like they're being taken care of, goes a long way. So yeah, definitely a an overlooked piece when it comes to treating the individual versus just treating the symptom.
And it's funny too because I think like doctors, physical therapists, these are all people, smart people who go into
And they want to
right,
help.
they go into healing, this is what they want, and then kind of the way our world has worked has taken it away from them a bit, but they
Right.
get stuck in
I
that.
completely agree.
Like I
Yeah.
don't think anyone's being the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like
No, but almost at the top where you get these certifying boards and the board of health and stuff like that, they almost are too formal and they lose sight of like I'm not sure how to say it, but they're like too structured and too one-sided, and they lose that um, duality of both sides of it. And they're always just trying to focus on Western philosophies, and in my opinion, you got to kind of combine the two Eastern philosophies and Western philosophies when it comes to healing the body. The Western philosophy, if someone came in and they said they had pain and they had a rock in their shoe, they'd be like, all right, we'll take some Advil and the pain will go away. And Eastern philosophies would be like, well, let's find the rock and let's take it out of your shoe. And I think we're too quick to get somebody on the path of drugs or surgery intervention. And that doesn't really fix the underlying issue. It really just covers it up for a short period of time.
right. I mean that's really true. We are very much about a band-aid fix. And part of that is we are leading busy, hectic lives and we
Right.
struggle to justify making time for ourselves even when we're in pain. I always remember it was a sports medicine doctor here in Connecticut who had said to me, when someone has foot pain, people will give, like, a doctor will give them an orthotic. And people think, great, I have my orthotic, I'm good for life. And oftentimes the orthotic can be helpful and reduce pain. So that's a fantastic tool, right? Because if you can get people out of pain quickly, you want to use that. But he
Right.
said, but it's like a neck brace. No doctor would ever give a patient a neck brace and say, that's it. You're good. You're going to
Wear this
wear this
forever.
forever. And no patient would be okay with that because of our vanity. But when it's a orthotic, we think no one's going to see that. It's fine. And the problem is, while it can get you out of pain and it's a tool, it structurally can weaken your foot.
Right.
So what you need is that orthotic with exercise and movement to strengthen the underlying problem, because the orthotic doesn't, it's the band-aid, it doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
But we're quick to accept that, right? Because like, it's like, oh, I put this in, I feel better, and I move on to the next thing. I drive my kids here, I get over here, like.
Yeah, everyone has a busy schedule, so but I almost find that can be an excuse, because I know, I'm sure we all have plenty of those clients who are like CEOs of their business, and they have, 3 or 4 kids and a wife, and they travel all the time, but they still are dedicating time and prioritizing part of their life to educate themselves and get better and get healthier the right way, which is unfortunately the longer way. But, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So there's something to be said for the long, harder way, because it's going to be more sustainable in the end.
Well, I was thinking coming onto this podcast, like, that was a question I had for you. It was one that I was trying to come up with while researching the book. And I think through research, I found a couple of answers and through experience, but I don't know that I have like the end all and be all answer. But I do think, you know, and you might have a very different client base than I do, but I get some people who love movement, but most of the people who come to me, they don't necessarily love movement as much as I do, but they know it's good for them, or they feel better afterwards, so they're motivated to come. But there is a massive pool of people that are not interested in exercise. And how do we in our profession entice them or intrigue them to start moving? Like, how do we show the people that are really resistant to movement that it's worthwhile? How do we hook them? I don't know if you guys have
I
answers to that. I have some ideas, but
I think. Oh, Mike, you want to
Well,
go ahead?
yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question I think we all faced. We can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. And as coaches, I mean, my experience has been making things fun, really finding out what that individual really likes, wants, and desires, and finding a way to make sure that however I gear my coaching or my intervention for whatever I'm trying to solve or achieve with them, that it's working with their intrinsic motivation versus something that they're chasing that isn't really deep within inside them. So their deeper why, for example. And so that's where the work really needs to be done. Is I think people need to go deep inside themselves to really figure out what that is for them, what's gonna drive them intrinsically. For me, that's always been the thing. The method I've used in my coaching is really dig deep into some questions to make people answer questions that they maybe haven't answered about themselves before. I think we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do, and that's kind of where the real work starts. And you can do that work yourself and do a lot of research in that, or you can outsource it and have a coach, or an instructor, and have them, essentially, poke and prod into those questions and gain the trust and hopefully peel back the onion a little bit and find out what's really driving this person, and then use that to leverage your whatever you're trying to move forward towards.
At a certain point, it really is the individual to click over and make that decision. Like, I need to make a change, and just having that awareness, like, something's not right. I need to make that change. That's kind of the first point, right? And that's what we're doing with our books. That's what we're doing with our podcasts. Oh, and I just want to mention real quick, the book that Maggie Downie has is called Keep Moving, Take Steps to Relieve Pain and Improve Life. And you guys can find it on Amazon. And I'll have information towards the book in the show notes at the end of the podcast. But that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're trying to wake people up and get this information to them in a clean, concise format that's easy for them to understand. I think the next step is that as coaches, trying to understand the individual and what they need, and what is the next step for one person might not be the next best step for another person. So when you get somebody who's clicked and made that decision that they need to change, and they come to a coach for guidance, I think that's when it's really our job to provide the information in a way that makes sense to them and keeps them engaged. Yeah, I think that's super important. What do you think, Maggie? What's your answer to your own question?
I mean, honestly, the points you guys both made is exactly it. And not only is it the answer I feel like I found, but it's the answer that research shows people stick to. It has to be fun, right? And it also, you have to find their intrinsic motivator, whatever it might be, right? Like maybe that's like, you know what, I've never run a marathon and I want to run it. Or all I care about is getting up and down off the floor to play with my grandkids. Because the workout's going to be different, but if you can figure out what they want, you can get them to stick to and commit to a routine and regular exercise better. But I feel
Right.
like there's still something missing because the World Health Organization like just put out that they are not meeting what they were hoping their goals were for getting people more active. In fact, they're not going to meet their deadline in 10 years for increased activity. That 1.4 billion people worldwide aren't getting enough activity. And so I feel like, okay, so we know it's got to be fun and we've got to find their motivation, but something is still missing here because, and I'm not saying this even negatively on us because there's only so much we can do, but we're failing 1.4 billion people, and we can't fix them all, but that seems like a huge number of people.
Well, when it's a shame, but kind of like the herd of buffalo that stays strong and active, and there's going to be the weak ones and the ones that don't make it, unfortunately. And it might sound harsh, but there just are going to be those people that we can't reach, and it's going to be like beating a dead horse. And all we can do as professionals is just keep being persistent um, and try to stay top of mind and relevant to that person. But let's dive into a little bit of some pain stuff, because I'm really interested in how you address somebody that comes to you and says, I just have so much pain, I can't even work out, right? Like someone who couldn't even do a yoga class, for example, because I see a lot of people at the gym that I try to motivate and try to get them healthier and movement patterns healthier, and they almost don't believe me that they can get out of that chronic pain. So, Maggie, what do you typically do? How do you typically address, say, like a brand new person that walks into your clinic and says, I just have so much pain, I don't even know where to begin?
Yeah, I think I try to kind of re-educate people. I think we have a mindset that is pretty common in the US that like we have to do more, 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 and that a little bit isn't good enough. And I think it's
Hmm.
important to remind people it is okay to start small. If you are suffering from extreme chronic pain and you have for a long time, your practice might begin with breathing or micro movements, which are like very small. You're moving a part of your body maybe an inch back and forth, and you're playing with what range of motion you have, and you're exploring what you have pain free. And people really struggle with that. They think it's not enough, they think it's not fast enough. But anytime I've personally been in pain, it's been really small movements and coming to understand my deep core strength, not my big like grunting, oh, I could lift a bunch of weight. Um,
Right.
that has helped me learn more about my body and slowly take control over that pain. So I think we need to teach people that less is more, but it's hard. People really struggle to, it's like they don't believe it. And I don't entirely know where that comes from either. But breathing is huge, right?
I'm
Breathing.
so happy you said that. I'm so happy you said breathing. That was the first thing you said, and it just lit up because it's so true. And it's so funny how something so simple gets so overlooked. But even myself as a professional, like it was probably only a year and a half, 2 years ago that my paradigm really shifted, because I really focused on breathing and everything I was doing. And one of the big contributors of that was actually Eric, because he got postural restoration certified. And I feel like they really talked about breathing, but he's also just a really knowledgeable guy about breathing and the thorax and the way air moves around your core. And I also do want to say that Eric actually did just hop on. So welcome, Eric, hopping into the middle of this interview. We're happy to have you on here.
How are you? Maggie, nice to meet you.
Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can all agree that when it comes to moving well and improving any limitations, breathing is kind of one of the first places to start. So that's so funny you said that, and I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, but at the same time, like we have to try to relax people about that because people get very tense and nervous. Like they feel like
Hmm.
they don't breathe right. They can't take a deep breath and then they get more frustrated.
Right.
And so one of my goals that I always realize is I have to build trust with people. When I first started teaching Pilates specifically, Pilates can be like really super focused on like things that I think a lot of people won't care about. And it can turn, I feel like it can turn someone off quickly, especially if you have someone who wants to do big moves and challenging exercises. And so I always felt like I have to let that come. I have to work backwards. Does my client want big moves and challenging exercises? I'm going to give them that until we build trust. And I can be like, hey, you want to know something about your fascia and how this will help you? You know, do you know if
Yeah.
you like can take an exhale here, it might help you get the power to do this. And, you know, you throw those things in once you've built trust with someone, but that takes time.
Yeah. It does come down to a balance of what the individual wants and what us as the coach or professional thinks that the person needs.
Right.
It's always a little bit of a balance that way. Um, but what sort of breathing techniques, or where do you start, I guess, when it comes to educating somebody on breathing patterns? Like, how would you start, I guess, from 0 to 60, educating somebody about breathing?
I mean, I think I would open up with like however you breathe is fine, right? There's a
Mm.
purpose behind every breath. So if currently you're stuck in a shallow breath, there's a place for a shallow breath. It's not that it's wrong, but we can explore more breath. And then I definitely use tactile, so I would put my hands on someone's rib cage because I find most people, I mean myself included when I started focusing on my own breath, it's hard to find that, especially if
Right.
you don't think about fitness 24/7, you know?
Right. Just having that awareness goes a long way. Just being able to breathe properly.
I remember when I first started training in Pilates, the breath is a very unique breath. It's not like a belly breath. We do what's called a lateral breath, and you're trying to expand your rib cage to the side and back, kind of like if you picture an umbrella opening and then closing. And I honestly probably spent 3 days, like as much as I could focus on thinking how to breathe that way. And I got sore from practicing that because breathing can be really challenging. We can tap into all sorts of muscles. The other thing I really try to, that I feel like resonates with a lot of people, is when I tell them how much of your body should be involved in the breath work, that the muscles of the neck, throughout your entire trunk. And then when I say to them that one of your pelvic floor's jobs is to aid in respiration, people are always shocked. They're like, it is? And they can relate to that and be like, yes, that is a full body breath. Like your pelvic floor muscle should engage and release with you. And then I explain to women, like when we pee a little when we sneeze, that's because that's not happening right. Right. And
Yeah.
so people connect with that, they get that, and I think that helps them find that connection with their breath. So it's always like when you understand how your body works, it helps you connect with it.
That's awesome that you have clients, or I guess you educate your clients on the pelvic floor as well, because I find that's a challenge for a lot of people too, is just finding that pelvic floor and coaching them to find that pelvic floor in everything we do, because you go from on the floor and then you're maybe squatting or deadlifting, and you still have to be able to kind of hone in on that core engagement and that awareness of your pelvic floor in those tough moments. So translating it over, I think, is super difficult for a lot of people. But do you find that that's kind of the first place you start with someone in chronic pain, is helping them find their pelvic floor and their breathing?
Uh, I I would definitely focus on breathing. Pelvic floor, I get to know my clients a little bit better because some people are comfortable with that right away and some people are not, right? Like, and if I had a male client, our first session, if I bring up a pelvic, first of all, I find that most men don't even realize they have Kegel muscles, right? So,
Right.
um, that's not something that's one of those ones where I'm gonna have to build trust on. I
Right,
feel like.
right.
And like I can talk about it in the breathing because we can have a joke, but I will bring that up little by little. Or I'll have actually sometimes after class, a woman will come up and be like, "Can you like do a little bit more with this?" And then I feel like I can bring it up with the class. And the truth is, when you start to discuss it, people are interested because they either know they're having problems. Very few women actually have totally fine functional pelvic floors, especially if they've had children, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um, so I mean, I definitely discuss it. I'll cue gently engaging the pelvic floor. Um, but it would be a person to person basis on how much time I necessarily spend discussing that. But I should probably spend more. It's so important. I should
Well,
because
good for you for being so nice about it, because I'm very I'm kind of abrasive with it. I'm just like, all right, squeeze your butt cheeks and everything in this region and just hold everything tight. And we'll do different like techniques or different drills to kind of educate them and show them the difference of when their pelvic floor is engaged and when it isn't engaged, and where they should feel the tension, and how that changes based upon their core engagement. Um, but yeah,
but
sorry, go ahead.
I think that's good, right? Like our different styles, that's important because someone will be more comfortable working with me, someone will be more comfortable working with you, and that's how we reach more people, right? Because if we're all doing it the
True.
same way,
100%,
like
yeah.
it's not the best. But one of the things I've found, and I don't know that everyone's comfortable with this, that again, I think people kind of relate to is, and I suggest the first time trying it in the shower, is if you, while you're in the shower, if you find your tailbone and you engage your Kegel muscle fully from front to back, because a lot of people can engage kind of the front but don't recognize whether they're fully engaging to the back, your tailbone will wiggle. And you can feel that with your finger. And then you don't always have to use your finger and find it because there's a little, you have to descend a little bit into crack territory to get there, right? But you can find that and then you can do your own tactile cueing to make sure you're engaging that full muscle. But it's also to me just fascinating that we can actually move our tailbone, right? And that we're
Yeah.
supposed to have mobility there.
Wow, I'm doing it right now. You're right.
I feel like we're all getting really close right now.
Maggie, I have a question. I want to go back just a little bit, and because it seems like you've really focused in on pain and pain management with a lot of your students and clients. What got you into kind of directing your focus towards pain management? What made you interested in it? What had you kind of go down this path? And were you always going down this path?
No, I think I was never going down this path. I think it was kind of an accident. I think I mean, I definitely have a mixed bag of clients. Like I have some student athletes and I have some certainly very fit people, not to say again, like cuz everyone sort of experiences pain at one point or another. But I guess I found with my clients who came to me in pain, that's where there was a lot of room for me to grow. Because when I first started teaching, like I wouldn't have the answers. And so I would research and explore in my body and see what it feels like and go back. And I I found that there were answers that helped a lot of people. Um, and that's super rewarding, right? When you feel like someone to me that's sort of the best part of my job. At the end of any session, I always ask my clients, "How do you feel?" And luckily, I'd say 95% of the time, they're like better than when I walked in. Who gets that in their job, right?
Yeah.
Like uh but it motivates me to be like, this person didn't feel as well as I would want them to today. So what's another solution? Like what is someone else doing for this? Or to get down on my own mat and be like, they said they felt this in their hamstring and I don't know why they would. Like, how can I make myself feel it in my hamstring so I can stop feeling it in my hamstring? Because otherwise I can't cue them for what they're feeling.
Hmm.
I
Um,
think that's a super important mindset to have as a professional for any other coaches or trainers who are listening out there, or maybe anyone's interested in being a instructor or coach at some point in their life, is always being skeptical and humble, to know that you might not have the right answer for this individual right away, and always kind of dig further and find that solution. And it's okay to tell clients or patients that you don't know, but you're going to look into it and you're going to get back to them. I think that that's huge. And back to kind of what we were talking about a little bit before about where the problems are. um I think fear and anxiety is definitely one of them, but then I also think a lot of times people come to us as professionals and it's like they want us to give them the answers and fix them right away. And when we can't, they I don't know, they lose motivation or they lose trust that it's even possible. They lose sight of the process, and they're just so focused on the result, and it's so overwhelming that they haven't gotten the result right away and right now. Do you find that you experience that a lot with chronic pain patients or clients, that like, are they just stuck in their own head, and how do you combat that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all a little bit stuck in our own head, right? Like even me knowing my body really well, you know, the the week my book came out on chronic pain, I tripped and sprained my foot. And my initial thought
How
was like,
ironic.
right, yes, yeah. And my boyfriend was like, "Didn't you just write a book on how to move for chronic pain? And didn't it tell you flip flops were bad, weren't you?" And I was wearing flip flops, and I was like, "Yes." Um, but my initial thought was like, "Oh my God, why is this happening to me? Like, I don't have time for this. How am I going to get out of this?" Like to
Mm,
just go to all these unhelpful thoughts. And then, when I like calmed down and caught my breath and like, I mean, I was still frustrated, but I think I took some of the same paths that I try to teach my clients, but I've become more comfortable with it. And the big part is that it has to be exploratory. We all have to be willing to explore what we feel in our bodies more. And what I find and kind of worries me a little bit about us culturally is that a lot of people are, like you said, anxious, they're timid, they feel like they need to be told what they do, what's right, what's wrong. But I think if we can explore our own body, we have a capacity to figure out what's wrong with us a little bit. And I'm constantly trying to get feedback from my clients because I live by they are always right. Like, I can know they're supposed to feel it here. This should not cause pain. But if they feel it someplace else and it has
right. You trust them and go with that. Right.
right, because I can't teach them anything unless I respect that. And my big thing is I'm happy that they want me and I'm happy to work with them week after week because I grow to really like these people. They become very important in my life, especially if I've had clients for years. But I want them to have the tools to do things at home and know that that's okay and learn about their bodies. And my clients who do that more obviously get better results because if you come to me once a week, it is better than nothing, but that's not enough to unravel a lifetime of chronic pain. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Oh,
But I
absolutely.
think we have to try to teach people it's okay to be exploratory. It's okay to do something wrong. That's not even wrong. Does it feel good? Does it hurt? Do what feels good. Stop what hurts. Right?
Yeah, very simply put. I love it. Um, Maggie, I have a quick question for you.
Mhm.
Who do you look up to, and maybe who were some of the impactful people in your life that were role models as you were coming up in this industry before you, and as you wrote your book, I guess?
Well, believe it or not, actually, one of my role models, and I think I'm not sure that I would still be in this profession if she wasn't one of the educators, is Kate Valone, who is my partner on our online programs that we did that I'd mentioned. And when I first started training in Pilates, I thought I was going to have to go to Boston or New York to get certified. And there randomly was one of the most reputable Pilates certification programs 20 minutes from my house in South Windsor. And the woman running it was Kate Valone of Evolution Pilates. And to this day, because I go for recertification, I go to other trainings. She is still one of the best teacher trainers that I have found in
That's
Pilates.
awesome.
And so I just felt like really lucky that so close to home was someone who was so good, or at least so good for me. The way she teaches is really like how I think. And so it's nice to get to work with her, but I would say I always liked PJ O'Clair from Stop Pilates. I mean, obviously, Mari Windsor is a famous name in Pilates, and she's kind of how I first ever heard of Pilates, so that's significant to me. Um, and then there are some people on YouTube I follow, and I'm ashamed I can't remember the name, but there's a really good pelvic floor specialist that I can get you access to if it's something we could put in the show notes because I find her really helpful.
Yeah, please do. No, we'll just handle that after. But yeah, please send that over because I'd love to. I'm going to look into a lot of these names because they don't really sound familiar for me because I was more on like the strength side and like strength and conditioning coaches and stuff like that. So I love kind of diversifying my portfolio and helping, you know, a wide range of clients based upon what's out there and the professionals that can offer their expertise. I think it's really important.
Yeah. And so those are like fitness experts, and then there are people who are experts in fascia, right, and movement. So Joanne Avison. Liz Cook is a psoas expert. She has a book on the psoas, and she runs psoas workshops. And those are
Is
some
she
names that I
related
go
to
to.
Gray Cook by any chance?
I don't know. I think her name is spelled Koch.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just
But
curious.
those are people that I definitely started reading that got me fascinated by that could make me want to read a book on one muscle. You know what I mean?
And then what stimulated you to want to combine all this knowledge and expertise into a book?
Yeah. So again, it was the fact that I felt like lots of people were in pain, and that there are certain simple things that if people know can be helpful. And that I also, what I did feel like was missing that could be beneficial to instructors, especially new instructors, but also people who aren't fitness nerds, right? Is to have a book about your body and about pain and movement that doesn't read like a textbook, and that is a really easy read, like you are sitting down talking to a friend and learning kind of like the funny, quirky piece about your body that will help you get out of pain. So like that's really what I'm hopeful I did with this book, is to make it a very easy read, with kind of fun stories thrown in, really lighthearted cartoon illustrations. Um, at one point, there's a picture of women protesting for the sake of their pelvic floors, right? Like just
Well,
some cartoon fun thing. Like make it lighthearted and weed out the parts that no one would care about. I know my mom was the first person to read my book. She like read my first draft and she's like, "You have this whole section on fascia. Why would anybody care? You have to rewrite it." And I rewrote it and she's like, "Still no one would care." And I
it's
rewrote it and
smart.
rewrote it until my mom was like, "All right, this is interesting."
Because you're trying to get through to basically right to anybody, to like your lowest common denominator, your lowest common person that would not be interested in any of this stuff. So pictures are great for me because I'm not the best reader. So I'll definitely be able to flip through your book quicker than any other book I can. I'm just a slow reader.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's just if we can't pique people's interest, then we can't hook them,
Exactly.
right? We have to make the journey fun, you
Right.
know? And I love telling stories. I That's one of the ways I try to make my classes fun is my classes know whenever they hold plank, I'm going to try to tell them an entertaining story. Uh,
Ooh,
and
okay. Can you tell us an entertaining story? I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Maybe if any come to mind.
all right, I'm trying to think like what was my story this week? Well, definitely one of them was my recent sprained ankle in the book. But
Okay. Maybe you have a client
okay,
story, a more recent client story.
a more recent client story. Well, how about I guess this one might be dated. The one I told this week was one of my Thanksgiving stories. And so when I first started dating my boyfriend 17 years ago, um, he came, the first time he was meeting my family was the day after Thanksgiving, and we were going to get our Christmas tree. And my family got a giant Christmas tree, like 12 to 13 feet high and 8 feet wide. No farm could ever bag it. We would have to like line it up at one end of the house at a door, tie a rope to it, run the rope across the house out a window, tie it to a car, and drive the car away from the house to pull the tree into the house. And so he was coming into this experience for the first time. And a little background in addition is my mom and stepdad at the time were drinking kombucha tea before this was popular. So you'd like find a person somewhere who would mail you a really disgusting mushroom, and you'd grow this fungus into this disgusting liquid in the cupboard, and then you'd siphon off the like juice, and they would store it in an old water gallon in the refrigerator. And so Matt, my boyfriend, had come to get this tree, and it turned out he was sick to his stomach, and he was like throwing up the whole time behind other trees in the tree yard, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he's like just meeting my family. And we get home, and my mom is like, "Who wants a mimosa?" And Matt says he doesn't, and he looks in the fridge and he sees what he thinks is a little bit of cider, except it's this kombucha
Oh,
tea.
oh man,
And what's in this container is a month of them collecting this tea.
And he's already
And so
it was
he
pungent.
It's pungent. He's poor, and he has no sense of smell, by the way, so he can't like have any warning that this is coming. And so I walk around when he has a glass poured in one hand, but he's still holding this gallon of month supply of kombucha, and he puts it to his mouth, and in slow motion, I reach out and do one of those, no! But it's too late. He drops the glass. He drops the gallon. It's like spilling all over the floor. He makes a beeline for the bathroom. And when he came out after throwing up again, he looks at my mom and says, "Can I have that mimosa now, please?"
That was the first time meeting.
I mean, I think he might have met my parents once before, but it was like the first time he was spending like a day with my mom. Yeah. Yeah, because we met in early November, and that happens the day after Thanksgiving. So yeah, it was pretty early on.
And what was your advice to him to relieve his pain symptoms? No, I'm just kidding.
I wasn't even in this field then. Like I took a totally different course. My background at the time was education. Or actually I was in college when I met him, but I taught high school and worked in museum studies.
When did you get diagnosed with Hashimoto's?
When 7 years ago I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. Yeah.
Okay.
So if people don't know, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease that generally causes hypothyroidism. So I have Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism.
Do they kind of relate, like with chronic pain and autoimmune disease? Do you find any connection there when you're coaching clients? Maybe you find some techniques that worked for you that work for them, or maybe you find clients who are in chronic pain and also have autoimmune disease.
Yeah, well, I do think there's definitely a lot of autoimmune disease. There's certainly a lot of hypothyroidism, so I can relate to a lot of people with those things. But I I, I think yes, right? Because at least your thyroid helps much of your body function, your sleep, your metabolism, um, all sorts of parts of your body are controlled by your thyroid. So before I got diagnosed, I was actually really sick, and it took a while for people to figure out what was wrong with me. And so I think going through that frustration can help me relate to people because very often people in chronic pain, like if you have rheumatoid arthritis, movement is great. It's going to help you feel better, but we don't currently in our world have something that's going to make that go away. Like I don't have currently something that's going to make my Hashimoto's go away.
Right.
At this stage in time, it's a lifelong problem for me, right? And luckily I have all sorts of tools to manage it. Sometimes it is flares up and it's worse than others. Um, but it's like anything. It's kind of a little bit self-talk. Like what I've learned is when I first got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I thought, "Oh my God, is this my life? What has happened to me?" Like, and no one can figure out what's wrong with me. But now I can know, like, okay, I think my meds are off. I have to like get a little more medication, or maybe I ate some gluten and that's causing an aggravation. And this will pass because my overall lesson now is this will pass. So, right,
Right.
if you have rheumatoid arthritis and you have pain, we can encourage you to move because that's not going away, but we can teach you that after moving, you're going to feel better. And maybe right now that lasts an hour, or maybe during a flare up, it lasts 30 minutes. And when you're feeling better, that lasts longer. But we've got to give everyone the tools to tell themselves the pain you're feeling right now is not forever,
Right.
you know?
Right. And too many people can get trapped into that thinking for sure. So
Yep.
do you couple educating clients about nutrition along with pain management, or just kind of based upon the individual? And do you talk about it at all in your book at all about adjusting nutrition?
I don't talk much about nutrition. And
I was just
honestly,
curious.
like, yeah, no, I mean, it would be important. I think it's incredibly important, but I don't
Next
feel like
book.
that's
The
my
next
area of
book.
expertise. Yeah, actually, that's what everybody keeps saying. And I was like, that's not what I want my next book to be.
Hey, sometimes you don't really get to pick what you're going to write your next book about, right? If everyone's
I know.
inquiring about what they want to hear from you next, you know. But I was just curious if you educated people about that at all in your book, and then if you do talk about it at all, just kind of in your practice.
Yeah, no, it's not in the book, and I feel like I don't have a good enough background to like if I read an interesting article, I'll share that with a client or anyone just because I like to share anything I read that's interesting, right? But I don't feel like I have enough background to really advise someone in that. I'm gluten free, so I went gluten free when I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's because there's a link,
Mm,
even though I'm not celiac. So
absolutely.
if people have questions, I'll share my experience about that,
Well, yeah,
Um,
inflammation absolutely plays a role. And, if you have any nutrition questions for us, Mike and Eric are precision nutrition certified. I'm fitness nutrition specialist certified. But that's probably more towards what we see. We see more people who have weight loss goals or have body composition goals. Less so more than less than chronic pain probably than what you see, right? You typically see more chronic pain individuals, I would assume.
well, yes, right. Like most of my clients aren't necessarily like trying to get a minimal fat percentage. That's not their goal, right?
But
But
do you see weight loss clients though as well?
sure, everyone wants to lose weight, right? But
Touche. Yeah,
But I'm always pretty upfront about that. Pilates, like any type of movement is good, but Pilates is generally not cardiovascular. And so it's not like going to be a quick weight loss routine, but it's going to make anything you do better, I believe. So, like if you're running, you'll be a more solid, stronger, safer runner. But,
absolutely.
nutrition matters no matter what. Because to your point, like if you have developed an allergy to something that you didn't have before, or the food you're eating is inflammatory, even if it didn't used to bother you, it's always good to kind of check in. I run every February because it's the shortest month of the year. I do a mindful eating challenge, and we're just like this Facebook group that any of my clients who want to join can join, and we just support each other to pick whatever it is we want to do. And I usually give up sugar, right? And some clients reduce their cheese or just try to watch their calorie count. But
Because
it's
it's
just a
probably too
pretty
hard for everybody else to give up sugar. It's like one of the hardest things for people to do.
Well, what's funny is for years I made it like the no sugar for the month of February, and like one client might try to do it with me. And it was a client of mine who's a life coach who was like, maybe make it the mindful eating challenge. And now we have
Hmm,
20 people that
I
do it
like it.
consistently, Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There you go. That's another or not easy way, but another way to simplify things for people to get people involved and get people making changes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think nutrition is definitely underutilized and overlooked because even Hippocrates said like over 5,000 years ago, all disease begins in the gut, and I truly believe it because I have an autoimmune disease too. I have ulcerative colitis, and you have Hashimoto's, and I just feel like all disease really does somehow begin in the gut, just because that's where our body's interacting with uh, the organisms around us, right? Like how we absorb nutrients, everything we put in our body, it all plays a role.
No, and I do think that even science is finding that more and more. I'm fascinated by there's a great book called Gut, and it's about the microbiome health. And it's a very easy read too by, I feel bad because I'm forgetting her name, but she's from Germany, I
Does it
think.
have pictures in it?
Yes,
All right, then
yes.
I'll be able to read it.
They're really cute, like little gut pictures or pictures of poo, like, um,
Hey,
but yeah,
it plays a
no,
role. It's important.
I think we're learning how much our gut is relevant, and I definitely have found that in my own body with dealing with autoimmune diseases. Like I don't have a healthy gut, and it's something I'm still exploring and working on. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, I would say Dr. Gundry is one of the best resources that I've ever found when it comes to gut behavior and educating people on um, just nutrition and history in general. And before we stray off too far off topic, I just want to mention one thing. Just um, one major doctor, actually, what you mentioned gut and poo, and one major doctor, Dr. Burkitt, went to Africa in like the 50s, I want to say, and he studied colon cancer there, and he found that nobody had colon cancer there. So he started studying their fecal matter and their diets, and they were eating really fibrous things, and like chicory root and jicama, and he thought it was whole grains. So when he got back to London, he said, "You guys, we got to eat, wheat. We got to eat barley. We got to eat oats." And he just kind of that was where we took the fork in the road and we took the wrong decision, unfortunately. But he was kind of onto something. He just missed the fact that it was more of the fibrous, tuberous things that they were eating, and less so about the grains. But that's how we started this whole grain, whole grain, heart healthy movement. So I think it's important to understand the history of where we are now, and it kind of helps change people's thought process and paradigms and how they can make changes in their nutrition. But yeah, I want to get back to your book real quick because we're running on the last 10 minutes here. So I just want to get back to maybe the guys have any final questions they want to ask you. I know I have one question left that I want to ask you, or actually two questions left to ask you. But Eric, Mike, you guys have any questions that come to mind? Anything that wasn't addressed yet?
No, go ahead.
Fire away, man.
Okay, so my one question, two questions. If you got in the elevator with someone with chronic pain and you had 30 seconds with them, what would be your words to them?
Ooh, that's a good question. The elevator pitch.
Exactly. It really is.
Yeah, I think I would tell them to trust their body, listen to their body, and explore small movements. I would kind of show them to like wiggle their shoulders, turn their head, see what feels good, and trust that. And then seek out someone that they feel that they can trust and explore movement with, and talk to their doctor about that. Ask friends, talk to their doctor, find a professional that comes recommended that you can work with.
Great answer. Great answer. And I can see you actually probably wanting to be like, I'm going to stop the elevator. Let me show you a few movements real quick and show you some breathing techniques real quick. And I promise this will save your life.
Yeah,
it is
hard
I'm
for
glad
me
you
not
tried to
move.
keep it short. You tried to keep it short because you knew it was that 30-second pitch. So I appreciate
but I'm gonna have to work on that. That's a good question.
And my last question, just because I'm a really big quote guy, and just wondering if you have any favorite quotes you would like to share.
Well, I will definitely steal one of Joe Pilates' quotes, which I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically said, if you have a healthy, mobile spine at 60, you are young. And if you have a stiff, immobile spine at 30, you are old.
Oh, I love it. That's a
Yep.
great quote.
Yeah, because when we're in pain, it doesn't matter how old we are. We feel ancient,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. And
Um,
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
no,
If you have two or three more, that's totally fine.
I don't know. I'll always Google a good Mark Twain quote, you know. It's not necessarily related to fitness, but if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. um,
That is a good one. I've never heard that one either. But one that comes to mind after you just said yours, which is by one of my idols, Dr. Gundridge. He says his goal is I want everyone to die young at a ripe old age. And I just love how he basically helps depict the difference of young and old there.
yeah, no, that's super important for us to know because we get caught up in age, but it's how you feel. If you feel good, you don't feel that old, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And it's definitely important for us to remind clients of that because we can all that's another place we can get stuck in our head.
Absolutely. And that's sort of why we created this brand, Think Fitness Life. It's about mindset, exercise, nutrition, and it really does start in the command center up in your head and the way that you view things, the way you perceive things. And one more quote that comes to mind, because I feel like we're playing off each other here, is just by Lucius Annaeus Seneca. And he goes, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." I think that definitely applies here to this
No,
podcast.
that's totally true, right? Because when we're in pain, we're physically hurt. And if we tell ourselves this is the endless cycle, it's very hard to overcome that. Like, I don't know that you can think like, chronic pain go away and be very positive and will your chronic pain away. But I do think your mindset can determine your future, right? Because it'll be that motivator to get you out of pain. If you don't think there's hope, you're not going to do it.
And that was just a mic drop statement right there. You just said like what you had to say, and you just throw that microphone down, and you're done. That was great. I love it. But yeah, if you have any final words, Maggie, this has been absolutely wonderful. I loved having you on the show, and hopefully we can maybe get you back on again and pick your brain some more. But I just want to mention the book is called Keep Moving, Take Steps to Relieve Pain and Improve Your Life. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble store as well. I'm going to put all the information in the show notes. and how you can reach out to Maggie as well and her website, Personal Euphoria. And did you have any other closing statements you'd like to mention? I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I could talk about movement forever, but I think I'd say, especially on the off chance that we do have any of those people out there that like aren't avid movers, that just find variety right now. If you're in pain, seek out variety because it's repetition ultimately that causes pain. So if you have to sit all day, cross your legs in different directions, sit lotus style. Just look for ways you can make different changes and not always be so repetitive.
I love it.
But otherwise, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun to talk with you and quote fitness people, and I don't know.
Yeah,
It
great.
was a lot of fun.
What you're about.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like pain is a great topic. So many people can relate to it, and it's great that you have a book out there that can make people who don't have a whole lot of formal experience or don't know where to turn, a resource that they can use to kind of help guide them.
Yeah, it's hopefully a starting place where they can again be encouraged to find safe guidance. You know what I mean? Like a trusted voice. I hope it reads like a trusted voice with a lot of science to back it up because I am definitely someone who needs the research. There's nothing I put in there that is not backed by a study.
Well, Maggie, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'm very proud to say that we were your first podcast interview, right? This is the first podcast we debuted you on. I feel honored that we got to have this opportunity. So thank you again, and it's been a pleasure having you on. And that's it for this week, guys. See you next week.